Hi, I'm Andrew Laird, Senior Soccer Editor of RotoWire, and today I'm going to go through how to use our daily fantasy soccer cheat sheets for building lineups for DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo. So the first thing you want to do is go over to rotowire.com/soccer, which is kind of the hub for everything that we have, and then you can just click this first DFS button, and that's where you'll get all of our daily fantasy content. Now we have a link directly here for all of our cheat sheets, and if you click this link, you'll get not only our most active one, which is generally the Premier League main slate on Saturdays, but also every cheat sheet that we have for any slate. So we have a plethora of leagues that are covered by DraftKings, not as many FanDuel and Yahoo. But anytime there is a slate, either it's interleague or one of the individual league ones like MLS or Liga MX, we're going to have cheat sheets for them. So that includes showdown slates as well as the classic slates. Anything that DraftKings has in a league that we cover, we'll have a cheat sheet for it, and you'll find it in this cheat sheet link. Now, we don't have a slate today, but I do have one that I wanted to show you from this past Saturday because it gives a pretty good representation of how you can use the cheat sheet in order to succeed in daily fantasy soccer. So we had a 3-game slate: Crystal Palace at home against Leeds, Chelsea at home against Sheffield United, and West Ham home against Fulham. So generally one of the first things you want to do when you look at a daily fantasy soccer slate is see who's expected to win. Because generally we get more fantasy points from teams that win because they put up more shots, they create more chances, a lot of them send in more crosses. So just a 3-game slate's not too tough to digest, but we had Chelsea as a fairly big home favorite against Sheffield United, and you'll see here that we have them. These are basically just converted from odds that we get from FanDuel or DraftKings Sportsbook, along with the draw odds, clean sheets, and then these goal odds are calculated through the odds for them to score a specific number of goals, and it's a calculation that we use. So there's not a specific, this is how many goals the odds makers think they're going to score, but it's kind of a calculation from there. So you'll notice all of the totals are under 3, although they are also over 2.5, which is a fairly standard line in soccer. So looking at this slate, we probably want exposure to Chelsea because they're the biggest favorite. West Ham, not quite as big of a favorite, but they are still favored. And then the Leeds-Crystal Palace match is supposed to be pretty even. Leeds actually an away favorite in that one. So whether you're playing cash games or GPPs, figuring out who is going to take set pieces for these teams is important because those are where most of the reliable floor points come from. Our floor points are the fantasy points scored, not including goals and assists. So they're the more consistent points that we get. Generally, we focus on those for cash games, but they are important for GPPs, particularly in a low-scoring slate because those are the guys who are scoring the points in a slate that might not even have goals in it. So if you scroll down further on the cheat sheet, we have a free kick tracker. And what this does is it goes game by game of everybody who played in the match that took a free kick and how many they took. And additionally, it'll show whether they didn't, if somebody who has taken set pieces this season didn't take them in a game or didn't play, to give us a little more context of who was on the field when these happen. So as I mentioned, Chelsea's the biggest favorite. So we would theoretically want to go in and say, let me get the set piece taker from Chelsea to start. The green dots here indicate who is starting. And as you can see, Chelsea have really spread out their free kicks this season. Timo Werner, I believe, only took one back in game week 4, or their 4th game. So he's probably not going to be in the conversation for set piece, especially with Ben Chilwell, Reece James, Mason Mount, and Hakim Ziyech all starting. So it's not foolproof. As you can see here, Ben Chilwell was consistently taking for 3 games, and then Mason Mount took in the last one. And then we also saw Ziyech, as you'll see, 9 minutes, 18 minutes. Those are coming off the bench, but then played 73 and didn't take any. So it gets a little complicated with Chelsea, but generally we know that it's going to be probably one of these 4 guys. So whether you want direct exposure to one of them or try to get multiple guys, those are the ones that you're probably going to want to try to focus on. So going further, just looking at the green dots, so these will be yellow when they're expected and they turn green as we confirm the lineups. So for Crystal Palace, we see Andros Townsend and Eberechi Eze have been splitting recently. Luka Milivojevic has taken, but he's not in the starting lineup. Same with James McCarthy. So generally we can think it's going to be either Townsend or Eze, or they split. A lot of teams do split their set pieces, which is kind of what we see with Chelsea. Going down with Fulham, we see Ademola Lookman and Tom Kearney have taken recently. So they're starting, so there's an expectation that they'll take some set pieces. Leeds is going to be Matthias Klitsch, Jack Harrison, and Patrick Bamford kind of has the same line as Timo Werner, that he probably took a few or one or two random ones in a game, but generally we're expecting Klitsch and Harrison to take them for Leeds. Sheffield United, we have two guys here, John Lundstrom and Oliver Norwood, who are leading the team over the course of the season, although we do see Sander Berge took a few in their previous match, so maybe he gets a few. And then finally with West Ham, we have Aaron Cresswell and Gerard Bowen, generally been taken all season. I mean, we see Andrei Yarmolenko here with 3, Mark Noble with 1, but they haven't even started, or they're not even starting, so we're not expecting them to take any. So from a cash game perspective, you generally want these guys, at least one of them. Usually you want one from each favorite just so that we can make sure that we have the set pieces. For GPPs, we want the goals, though. And so that's where this anytime goal scorer odds chart comes from. These are from DraftKings Sportsbook. Basically, we just take all of the anytime goal scorer odds of every player on the slate. We list them here with their DraftKings salary. This is a DraftKings cheat sheet. And just kind of a calculated percentage of what the player line is. So as we can see, Timo Werner, he leads the line for the biggest favorite on the slate with the highest implied goal total, so it's not surprising that he is at the top of the list here. And then we can just see the guys who are there, who are starting, who also are high up here. So generally what a lot of people like to do is that they will look at the top list here and see if there's anyone who is fairly cheap that might have good goal odds. So we see Werner was priced at 8,400 on this slate. Tammy Abraham, who started up front with Werner, 7,400. Patrick Bamford, 8,100. These are all pretty expensive. But then we get Sebastian Haller at 5,700, who has pretty much the same goal odds as guys who are much more expensive than him. Alexander Mitrovic from Fulham, Wilfried Zaha at 9,200 against Leeds, Gerard Bowen, who we saw on the set piece tracker earlier. So these are generally the guys that people will go to when they're looking for goals. And you obviously have to pay for goals because those are the biggest point swings in daily fantasy soccer. So we move down a little bit here. Not only do we have the free kick tracker and the goal odds, but these are the actual stats that these players are getting throughout the course of the season. So what I like to do, at least for cash games, is to sort this column, and all of these columns are sortable, but sort the column for floor. So again, floor points are total fantasy points minus goals and assists. So these are going to be the players who send in the most crosses, take the most shots, draw the most fouls, win the most tackles. All of those points add up, and we're just throwing out the goals and assists because generally, like we saw in the goal scorer chart, Timo Werner was the only player over 50%. So that means everyone else on the slate, more than half of the time, is not expected to score. So focusing here, we obviously see a bunch of Chelsea guys. Chilwell and James we saw, and Mason Mount we saw on the free kick tracker, and a lot of those free kicks developed into chances created and crosses, which is why we see they're so high here. Now, one thing to watch out for, particularly early in the season, is we have pretty small sample sizes. So you'll notice Chilwell's only played 360 minutes, 453 for James. Alioski with 165, which is, he has one or two good games or a few good appearances off the bench, and he's going to score high in this floor point model, or statistics. So make sure you're cognizant of that, excuse me, just when you're looking at these, because it could be just a small sample size of why they're doing so well. So, like I said, all of these are sortable, so you can go to the crosses. We see Reece James and Ziyech very high up. Chances created, they're going to be around the same. We've got Jack Harrison, who took set pieces for Leeds. Excuse me. So this is all, you can play around with all of this. And then if you really want to include the goals as well, Ziyech has obviously been killing it, but only 100 minutes. But he's just so far and away above everybody else, at least to start this season. So, like I said, you can do this for any stat, whether it's fouls suffered, tackles won, interceptions, shots. It's all here and all fully sortable. So further down, we have two different team stat sections. The first one is the individual team stats and then the stats that they've conceded. It's basically a DVP, but for a whole team. So these are also sortable. So you can see here, Chelsea are averaging the most goals on the slate, per match of the teams on the slate. Also averaging the second most shots on goal, the most interceptions. We see that Fulham are actually averaging the most crosses. So in this, the way you use this is just to see if there are teams that particularly like to cross a lot. Like Chelsea is scoring a lot. They're taking a bunch of shots, but they don't necessarily cross nearly as much as these other teams. On the flip side, if you scroll down a little further, we have the stats that they allowed, conceded stats. So basically the way you read this is that Crystal Palace have allowed 21.86 crosses per match this season. Now, some of this is a little bit of noise if they have one game where they went down a man because of a red card, and then all of a sudden they were just getting a barrage of crosses. Over the course of the season, it kind of smooths out. But you can just see here, do I want to play the team against Crystal Palace because they allow a bunch of crosses, or the team that's playing Sheffield United because they allow a lot of crosses? Do I avoid playing guys who cross a lot against Fulham because they don't allow a lot? So that's just the way that you can use these bottom two tables. So what I like to do is then, since we have these games already played, we can see kind of where we saw how these games ended up. So one of the neat features here is this View Detailed Formations link at the bottom of all of our lineups. And what these do is take you to the box scores that we have for this match. Now, fantasy soccer box scores are really not something that's all that available. And so we really went and took our time to figure out what we wanted to put in these box scores to make them useful for people. So what we have at the top, this is the first match of the slate, Crystal Palace versus Leeds. Again, this was supposed to be the closest match of the slate. Crystal Palace blew Leeds out 4-1. As you'll see, Crystal Palace were a home underdog. These are basically just the lines that we saw from the cheat sheet. And if you scroll down, we have a full formation of how they lined up. So you can see Crystal Palace was in a 4-4-2, Leeds in a 3-3-3-1, which is the first time they've used that all season. And then these are just where everybody started on the screen and then how many minutes they played. And what you can actually do is pick a specific stat if you just want to see kind of where all the crosses came from or where the shots came from. So if you just click this cross button, you can see like Jack Harrison crossed 7 times, Matthias Klitsch crossed 8. It's important to note that these are the number of crosses they had in the positions they generally played. That doesn't mean Klitsch crossed 8 times from his central position. I think most of those were probably set pieces, which we'll get to in a little bit. But it just gives you a good idea of who was taking these. So now really the bulk of the box score is down here. Excuse me. So we can see here we've got the team stats all laid out. Crystal Palace, 4 goals with 35% possession is really just crazy to see that they ended up this way. But if you think back to what we were looking at with the free kick tracker, the expectation was that Eze and Townsend were going to be the ones to take the set pieces. And so if we look in this corner tab, or corner column, we see that Eze took 2 and Townsend took 1. And then again, you can see all of the stats that came in for each team. And then we thought it was Harrison and Klitsch for Leeds. And we see here, Harrison took 4 corners, Klitsch took 2. Obviously, they combined for 15 crosses. And then obviously we go back to the anytime goal scorer odds and we remember Patrick Bamford, expensive, but he did score a goal. And then from the Crystal Palace side, we had goals from Jordan Ayew, Eberechi Eze also scored, Scott Dan got the random center back goal, and then there was an own goal, which obviously doesn't count except for the negative points for the goalkeeper. So we can do this for all 3 games on this slate at this point. So we have Chelsea and Sheffield United. Again, we have the formation at the top. And then we scroll down to the team page, or the team stats. So we see Mason Mount took 4 corners, and Hakeem Ziyech took 2, leaving Chilwell and James out. Chilwell didn't even send in a single cross the entire match. Of course, he scored a goal to make up for it. But again, thinking back, Werner had the top goal scorer odds on the slate. He scored. Abraham had the second highest odds, and he scored. And then they did allow a goal. We saw David McGoldrick was the one who broke that clean sheet. But then we see Norwood and Lundstrom were the ones who took set pieces, and then Ben Osborne, who was actually further on the free kick tracker. He didn't start. He took 2. So we just see that like the free kick tracker, generally teams don't change their free kick takers all that often. So generally, if a guy has taken a few games in a row, we're going to expect him to do that again. And then West Ham and Fulham. We'll just scroll down here. Gerard Bowen, 3 corners. Aaron Cresswell, 6 corners. And let's see here. We got Souček, who had the goal. He is not Sebastian Haller. And then Tom Kearney and Ademola Lookman were the set piece takers for Fulham there. Again, if we go back to our cheat sheet here, all of these guys were here. Klitsch and Harrison, Lundstrom and Norwood, Cresswell Bowen, Mount and Ziyech, Townsend Eze, Kearney. I mean, they're all here. So, and all of the guys in our anytime goal scorer odds. I mean, these guys scored. He scored. I mean, this is why we include all of this stuff. That doesn't mean to say that the guys who are on the anytime goal scorer odds are going to score every game. Doesn't mean that the set pieces aren't going to change. But that's pretty much how you use our cheat sheets to find the players that you want to target, and then you can just kind of fill in the rest with guys you think are going to do well, because set pieces aren't everything, and there are plenty of people who don't focus immediately on set pieces. What you can do is focus more on crosses and chances created. I mean, these are the stats that generally come from set pieces, but they don't have to. And so there are guys who still cross a lot, who don't necessarily take set pieces, and you can just use those from there. And then use your shot takers for the guys who you're looking for goals, and maybe go down to the bottom and see who's giving up the most shots, and you focus on the players who are taking the most, and you just kind of work your way through there. So that's kind of the overview of how our cheat sheet works, how you can use it. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me on Twitter. I'm at RotoWire Andrew. Also available in our RotoWire Discord chat, which is open for all subscribers. If you'd like to join that, just go to rotowire.com/chat. If you are not a subscriber and want to try us out for 10 days for free, no credit card required, just go to rotowire.com/pod, P-O-D. Like I said, it's 10 free days. That includes access to the Discord, where we have a bunch of people who are talking about daily fantasy soccer, all about the slates as they start, including how to kind of interpret stuff on the cheat sheet. If you have any questions there, that's always a great place to come. I'm available in there, but also all of the bunch of members of our community are there to help you there. So thank you for watching, and good luck out there.